The sharp scent of lemon cleaner still hung in the air as I stepped through my parents' front door, balancing a bakery box in my hands. Mom was in the kitchen, arranging a thrifted cake stand just so, while the aroma of roasted chicken wrapped the house in heavy warmth. Aunt Margot hovered at the dining table, nudging vases and shifting lilies, as if a few inches could somehow lift the family's reputation. I set the carrot cake on the counter and quietly sank into my usual part, steady, unnoticed. 10 minutes late, Celeste breezed in, hair perfect, voice loud, announcing she just had coffee with a buyer from Shorewood Hills. No gift, no dessert, no card, just her story. And as always, everyone leaned closer, as though she'd walked in carrying treasure. Dinner unfolded in its predictable rhythm. Dad topping off his glass, Mom fussing with napkins, Aunt Margot nodding like a loyal spectator. I was slicing the cake when Dad looked up, chuckled, and said it, "You'll never measure up to your sister." The room erupted in easy laughter. Celeste's grin widened. Mom laughed along like it was harmless. I kept my expression, even while my chest tightened. My hands kept working, sliding slices onto plates, but inside I burned. The words stuck to me heavier than the lemon cleaner in the air. No one noticed my silence. They were too busy hanging on Celeste's latest story about a downtown condo listing. When the night finally ended, I slipped on my jacket without a word. By the time I pulled into the cracked driveway of my apartment, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom lit up the screen. "Next time, bring paper towels. We're out." I set the phone aside, its glow sharp in my eyes, and thought of all the words I had swallowed over the years. That single request pulled at a thread that unraveled everything I had ignored. Years of quiet sacrifice, money leaving my account without thanks. I remembered the first call. I was 21, scraping by on my campus office job when Dad rang during a snowstorm. The power bill was higher than expected. Could I spot them $120 until Friday? I sent it without hesitation. Friday never came. But February did, and with it another request, gas money this time. Then groceries. Mom's voice always carried that blend of apology and expectation. So I told myself I was just being a good daughter. The pattern cemented itself. Every month, $300 for utilities. Midweek, another $40 or $60 for groceries. By my mid-20s, it was routine, like brushing my teeth. I made countless trips to Woodman's, dropping off groceries while Celeste posted selfies at the Memorial Union Terrace. I bought a thermostat from Home Depot and installed it myself because Dad's back was acting up. When the water heater broke, I put the plumber's deposit on my card. Through it all, I convinced myself that love meant reliability, that being dependable was who I was, even if no one noticed. Celeste, meanwhile, sparkled. The star, the favorite. I was the steady hum in the background. One night, scrolling my banking app, I started screenshotting each transfer. At first by accident, then on purpose. Month by month, folder by folder. Proof of a life measured in quiet transactions. The folder grew heavier than my silence. I knew one day it would demand to be opened. Celeste knew how to command a spotlight, even if it was just her phone camera. She staged open houses with bowls of lemons on spotless counters, posting reels of herself laughing on porches she didn't own. On summer nights, she posed at the Union Terrace, beer in hand, the lake behind her. Each post gathered likes that confirmed what our parents already believed. At family gatherings, her stories became the main course. Mom bragged she was on track to be Dane County's top realtor. Dad praised her networking. And when money came up, they rewrote history without blinking. Thanksgiving, when the water heater failed, Mom smiled at Aunt Margot and said, "Celeste made the calls that saved us." I sat there, remembering my card paying the plumber's deposit, the receipt tucked away in my folder. Meanwhile, my own world shrank to make space for theirs. I skipped dinners with coworkers after another transfer emptied my account. I put off the dentist for 2 years. Even the chair at my kitchen table wobbled each night, a Craigslist find I never replaced. There was always something more urgent for them. The worst cut came quietly. Aunt Margot, arranging flowers like always, leaned in during one of Celeste's stories and said, "She's the reliable one, isn't she?" Mom nodded. Dad chuckled. Celeste grinned. The word reliable belonged to me. The daughter who kept their lights on, their fridge stocked. But in that instant, I realized my role had been stolen, repainted in brighter colors, and I had stayed silent too long. That night, back in my apartment, I opened the folder of screenshots. It pressed down on me like a weight daring me to count. Sleep was impossible. The more I closed my eyes, the louder Dad's words replayed. I gave up, grabbed my phone, and opened the banking app. The glow lit my small apartment, the radiator humming. Line after line stretched back further than I wanted to see. Utilities, gas, repairs, groceries. Always just this once. I told myself I'd stop after a few months, but my thumb kept scrolling. Years blurred past in minutes. By the time I reached the beginning, the total in my head had swelled into something undeniable. I grabbed a pen and notepad, scratching down numbers, pressing harder with each sum. When I finally stopped, the figure stared back at me. Nearly $29,000. The number hit harder than any insult. It wasn't just money. It was every trip I never took. The savings I never built. The dentist visits skipped. The weekends I stayed home while Celeste posted lakeside dinners. I sat there, pen trembling, realizing silence had cost me almost everything. The next morning, I walked to the university library and started printing page after page of proof. And before I continue, let me pause here. If you've connected with this story so far, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more. I picked up a cheap green binder from the dollar store on East Johnson and spent the evening hole punching and filing away every statement. On the front, I scrawled one word: household. When I slid the last page in, the weight in my hands felt heavier than paper should. It wasn't just proof anymore. It was the record of my silence. And deep down, I knew a day would come when silence wouldn't be enough. That Sunday, I drove back to the house on the east side, the green binder tucked under the passenger seat like a secret. I told myself I wouldn't need it, that maybe this dinner would go by without comments, without comparisons. But I brought it anyway. Inside, the same lemon-scented cleaner lingered in the air. The table was set, chicken roasting, Aunt Margot pacing around the lilies. Celeste floated in 20 minutes late, heels clicking, carrying a glossy shopping bag. She pulled out a candle wrapped in gold tissue and placed it in front of Mom like a gift from royalty. Mom clasped her hands together as if it were a family heirloom. I stood there holding a bakery cake, suddenly invisible. We ate. Celeste carried the conversation, talking about an open house she had coming up and a client from Shorewood Hills. Dad laughed along, leaning back with his wine glass. I waited for the moment, even though I already felt it circling me. It came after dessert, when plates still carried crumbs of carrot cake. Dad looked at me, chuckled like it was just a harmless joke, and said it again. "You'll never be as good as your sister." Aunt Margot let out a laugh, shaking her head, adding, "Celeste is the one we can always count on." This time the words hit harder. My chest burned, my hand tightened around the fork. My mind went to the binder in the car, nearly $29,000 spelled out across years of silence. And something inside me cracked. I set the fork down, looked Dad straight in the eye, and said clearly, "Then tell her to pay all the bills, because I'm done sending money." The room froze. Mom gasped, hand pressed to her chest. "Are you out of your mind?" Celeste blinked, then smirked like she'd just been handed another line to perform. Dad's smile vanished, though he stayed quiet. Aunt Margot shifted uncomfortably with the flowers she'd been fussing over. No one moved, and for once, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it hang heavy, like the binder waiting in my car, because I knew the next step would demand more than quiet. The following Sunday, the family group text lit up with a new invitation: dinner at 6. We'll talk about a plan. I already knew what kind of plan it would be. Still, I drove across town, the binder this time not hidden under the seat, but sitting openly on the passenger side, steady against every turn. When I walked in, the dining table looked different. The chicken was carved on a platter, but beside it sat a calculator, a stack of envelopes, and a pad covered in numbers. Mom straightened in her chair. Dad looked more serious than I'd ever seen. except maybe when pulled over for speeding. Celeste leaned against the counter scrolling her phone. We've been thinking, Dad started. With prices climbing, interest rates, inflation, it makes sense for everyone to contribute regularly. He tapped the calculator like the numbers were destiny. A family contribution plan, Mom echoed. It's only fair. She gestured toward Celeste, who didn't even bother to look up. I sat slowly, pulled the tote from my shoulder, and set the green binder on the table. Before we talk about new plans, I said, we need to talk about the last 4 years. Mom blinked. What's that, receipts? I opened the binder. Pages fanned out dates, amounts, notes. Every transfer, every bill paid, groceries, utilities, repairs. Maybe I missed a few, but not many. The air shifted. Dad's jaw tightened. This isn't the time to play accountant. Mom flipped through a couple sheets, frowning. These were gifts, Tamsin. You wanted to help. We never asked for any of this. Celeste finally glanced up, a smirk tugging at her lips. Wow, you've really been keeping score, haven't you? I closed the binder softly, sliding it back toward me. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I'm your daughter, not your bank. If you need help, you ask, and you accept no for an answer. But the quiet withdrawals are finished. Dad leaned forward, hand resting on the calculator. You're being disrespectful. Disrespectful? I repeated, locking eyes with him. What's disrespectful is rewriting my life while demanding my checkbook. The silence that followed cut sharper than any argument. It stretched across the table like another set of numbers nobody wanted to admit. And in that moment, I realized silence would never be my role again. That night, after setting the binder on the table, my phone buzzed endlessly. The family group chat exploded, Dad warning me not to be dramatic, Mom typing out paragraphs about respect and sacrifice, Celeste tossing in a single laughing emoji. I muted the thread, opened my laptop, and let the screens glow steady my breath. Then, one by one, I began the transfers, utilities, groceries, gas. Each click closed out a cycle I'd lived in for almost a decade. When the prompt asked, "Are you sure?" I hit yes, every single time. The next morning, I scheduled a new transfer. This time, not to them, but to my own savings account. Same dates, same rhythm, only different. The same sums I've been sending them. It felt petty and necessary at once, like taking back a sliver of myself. I closed the laptop and laced my running shoes. The Yahara River Parkway was hushed, mist lifting off the water, geese slicing through the air. My body hadn't moved this way in years. I counted breaths and steps as if tallying something brand new. By midday, Aunt Margot invited me to coffee with the promise, not an ambush. Of course it was an ambush. She smiled over her cup, her practice lines spilling out about family unity and bridges not burned. I listened until her words blurred into the clink of spoons, then told her I was leaving. Accuracy wasn't cruelty, I reminded myself as I walked out. That night, Mom posted on Facebook, "Raising children is hard when they forget where they came from." Friends and neighbors poured sympathy into the comments. I didn't answer. Instead, I went to the co-op on Willie Street and bought berries, salmon, and that brand of yogurt I always skipped because it felt unnecessary. As I unpacked the bags, relief braided with grief. I felt lighter and lonelier. Still, when I lay down that night, my body unclenched in a way it hadn't in years. Sleep arrived without calculation, and I knew something had shifted for good. The first cracks appeared online. Celeste posted a photo of her new sneakers with the caption "Self-made," downtown Madison skyline blurred behind her. I stared at it a long time, remembering the months I'd covered her rent under the label emergency. Dad texted soon after, "We're a unit, Tamsin. Everyone does their part." Mom followed with a long message suggesting a fresh start. "Let's just agree on a number, maybe 300 a month. That way, there's no confusion." She added a smiley face at the end, as if that softened the ask. That same week, a letter arrived at my apartment addressed to my parents, but forwarded to me, because my address was still on old paperwork. A collections notice, $312 past due. I held it in my hands, felt the familiar tug of habit. For a moment, I pictured opening my banking app and covering it before it harmed their credit. Instead, I scanned the notice, typed a new email, and forwarded it to both of them with the subject line, "This is your bill, not mine." No explanation, no paragraph, just the truth. At the next dinner, Celeste avoided my eyes at first. For a second, I thought she might say something, anything, that admitted she knew the weight I'd carried. But when Dad raised his glass and Mom talked about family resilience, Celeste leaned back, tossed her hair, and doubled down with a story about closing a deal that didn't sound real. The smirk returned. The moment passed. Back in my apartment that night, I set a new rule. No banking app after 9. Whatever balance waited there could not fix my family at 9:01. I plugged my phone in across the room, crawled into bed, and let the silence hold me. The calls kept coming, the spin kept circling, but for the first time I felt like I had stopped orbiting them. Something steadier had begun, and I was learning how to live inside it. The first Sunday, I didn't drive to their house. I stayed home and made pancakes. The smell of butter and syrup filled the kitchen, and I lingered at the table with a long call to a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. It felt almost rebellious to spend a Sunday morning on myself instead of carrying groceries across town. During the week, I finally scheduled the dentist appointment I'd postponed for years. The clinic on Regent Street wasn't fancy, but sitting in the waiting chair, I realized how much I'd neglected in the name of being dependable. The bill was mine alone, and I paid it without guilt. The family messages didn't stop. Mom texted updates about Celeste's listings and slipped in comments about how family sticks together. Dad added a line or two about tough times. Celeste sent a photo of herself at a closing, tagged with a champagne glass emoji. The tone softened, but the story hadn't changed. No one thanked me for years of bills. No one admitted what I'd carried. They kept talking as if silence could rewrite the past. One afternoon, I walked into the Dane County Courthouse with papers in hand and changed the address on lingering accounts. No more notices would land in my mailbox. No more unpaid reminders masquerading as responsibility. Leaving the building, I felt lighter, as if I'd finally returned something that never belonged to me. That night, I wrote a new rule on a scrap of paper and taped it above my desk. Help, if asked clearly and respectfully, will be considered. Otherwise, the answer is no, it wasn't revenge. It was survival. I looked at the green binder on the shelf, closed tight, and understood that the next chapter of my life wouldn't be measured in quiet withdrawals. The sun dipped low over Lake Mendota as I walked the lakeshore path, the water flashing gold where kayaks crossed the surface. The air was cool and steady against my skin, and for the first time in a long while my steps felt unhurried. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another group text, another update about Celeste's newest win. I glanced, typed a neutral reply, and slipped the phone away. No money attached, no hidden strings. Back home, I opened a small box I'd been keeping on my desk. Inside was a brass key I'd found in a drawer, once meant for a lock that no longer existed. I set it in a shadow box and wrote a single word across the backing, boundaries. I hung it above my desk not as decoration, but as a marker of where the line now stood. The green binder stayed in my closet, wedged between old yearbooks and a winter blanket. I didn't need to carry it into every conversation or brandish it like a weapon. Its job was done. It held the truth I had doubted for too long, and knowing it was there was enough. Even when messages arrived, Mom sending a photo of the dog, Dad dropping hints about tight months, I no longer felt the old pull to fix it. Their story remained their story. Mine had shifted. I poured a glass of water, sat at my desk beneath the brass key, and let the quiet hold me. For once, silence felt like mine. I will not let anyone turn my love into a